spirit behind all of this. Honorable Consul General Ramakrishna ji, who is very wonderfully named because Sri Ramakrishna, Purnima ji, Manish ji, and members of the organizing committee here. Dear friends, thank you so much for coming and for waiting. The subject is something that is close to all of us. Happiness. Who doesn't yet know? I already see some smiles coming up. Happiness. We just mention happiness, we talk about happiness, that itself makes you happy. But our quest for happiness, that is our primary quest. Call it happiness, call it wellness, call it satisfaction, call it fulfillment, call it bliss. There are different words for it. But we do pursue it. It's instinctive for us. Why are we doing this? You might say, well, that makes me happy. Why do you want to be happy? There's no answer to that. What do you mean, why do you want to be happy? It's instinctive, it's fundamental. I remember this professor, he wrote from Caltech, Sean Carroll. Is that an Irish name? Yes, he must be Irish, yes. He is a well-known professor of physics at Caltech. He's written a number of very wonderful books. And one of his books is The Big Picture. It talks about cosmology, an introduction to ordinary people like us about latest discoveries in cosmology. All wonderful, but when I came to the chapter on consciousness at the very end, I was disappointed. Because like most people, he's sort of reductive over consciousness. It's just brain, it's just matter. And he writes something interesting here, a pushback against what I said just now. He says, people say that our goal is happiness. I don't agree. My goal is knowledge, and I'm willing to put up with unhappiness, a lot of trouble in order to get answers to the question which I'm pursuing. That is a surprisingly shallow way of looking at it. Because you can just ask the good professor, if you get the answers to your question, if your scientific inquiries are successful, will that make you happy or unhappy? It will make you happy. You are in fact pursuing fulfillment through science. Everybody is pursuing fulfillment. So, in recent years, there has been a movement to study this phenomenon scientifically. In psychology, there's been a movement, positive psychology. There have been psychologists throughout the history of modern psychology who have dealt with these issues, but as a major academic movement, positive psychology, 25, 30 years or so, it has become, it's really taken off. Especially in academia now, some of the most popular classes on psychology on college campuses among students. Is anything to do with happiness? If you're teaching, you will get hundreds of students turning up for your classes. Very inevitably. One of the pioneers in this movement is Professor Seligman, Martin Seligman. I never met him, but I've read his books, I've listened to him. He's a pioneer in the study of happiness. And his project was, he's very humorous. He says that in one talk he said that I was once interviewed by a cable news, like a television news network, breaking news and that kind of thing. And they said, we're going to ask you about the status of psychology today. But because this is television, you have to be very brief, you can't give a lecture. He said, okay, how many words do I get? And they said, one word. It's a joke, it didn't happen really. He said, okay. All right, Professor Seligman, what is the state of psychology today? He said, good. Cut, no. This is, you have to explain a little more. Just explain a little more. What do you mean good? 2 words. Instead you get 2 words. Professor Seligman, what is the state of psychology today? Not good. They were taken aback. What do you mean? You just said good, now you're saying not good. Please explain a little more. 3 words this time. What is the state of psychology today? And he said, not good enough. And then he said, I explained that why psychology is good, what it has accomplished so far, but why it is not good, what it has not accomplished, why it is not good enough, how can it be better? Why should psychology and psychiatry only deal with illness? Suppose I do not have illness, suppose I'm fine, but can't psychology help me to make my life a little better? Can't it make me a little happier, more resilient, more focused? And they said we should study these things. So he boosted the study of we have a psychologist right here. So they boosted the study of um, positive psychology, human strengths, not just human illness. And happiness was one of the focus areas. So anyway, all of this to tell you, I'm bringing in ideas from positive psychology, where what have they found so far? What are the conclusions so far? What can we learn from it and actually apply to our lives immediately to make our lives more fulfilled, more happy? Cutting a long story short, what they found is this. I'll put it in an equation. Happiness is equal to pleasure plus engagement plus meaning. H is equal to P plus E plus M. And you just remember that equation, that gives you the basic takeaway from all these studies. What does it mean? So Seligman explains, by the way, he was not the only person who studied happiness, there are many others. But Seligman explains that the first thing that we turn to for happiness, whenever we want more happiness, what first thing we turn to is pleasure. I eat my favorite food, or go and watch a movie, or just relax, or as youngsters would say, just chill. What do I want to do? I want to be happy. So turn to my most pleasurable activity, my favorite TV show, or whatever gives me pleasure. So we think pleasure will give us happiness. And it does. Immediately, it gives you a little bit of happiness. But then Seligman points out, and when you read that, it sounds just like 2,500 years ago you're reading Buddha's teachings. The problems with pleasure. First of all, and we all know this, pleasure is transient, temporary, momentary. So I like a cookie, I eat it. It's very nice, but only for 5 seconds. Then come. The calories are not gone. Then you have to work out for 15 minutes to work that out. So, it is instantaneous, but it goes away very quickly. Second, it is not very deep. It did not change your character, it did not make your life more meaningful, worthwhile, nothing. Just a little nice taste, that's all. Just a little, Viveknanda would say, tickling of the nerves. All kinds of pleasure are like that, mostly sensory pleasures. Some are like eating a cookie, gross, physical, lower down on the scale of refinement. Some might be very evolved, very refined. Classical music or art. Those are also sensory pleasures, but there are higher order pleasures. The third problem with this is not only temporary, not only shallow, not nourishing, but also habit forming. What do I mean by habit forming? All of us who have studied economics, the first thing they taught us in economics class, law of diminishing marginal utility. If you remember, as we consume more and more, less and less pleasure you get from it. They call it utility. So each unit of consumption gives us less of utility. So it's not that by consuming more, by eating more, watching more movies, going to more vacations, you will get more and more and more pleasure. No. You will get more, it will additively be more, but each quantity, each dose will be less and less and less. Till it can be zero, till it can actually be negative. Till it can take away from your happiness, it can subtract. Having pleasure can subtract from your happiness. The famous author, Somerset Maugham, one line I like which he wrote, by the way, he loved Vedanta. He read Vedanta very well. He went to India, Somerset Maugham. He met Raman Maharshi. And he has worked a lot of that into his book, The Razor's Edge. The Razor's Edge. At one time it was very popular. People used to read it here in the West and go backpacking in India in search of spirituality. But that was Somerset Maugham. And he says, if you single-mindedly chase pleasure, very soon you'll find nothing pleasing anymore. That's basically the law of diminishing marginal utility. So Seligman says, pleasure, it gives you happiness, but there are these problems. It is temporary, instantaneous, fleeting, momentary. It is not nourishing. It really doesn't contribute. It's like empty calories. It doesn't build up your psychological health. Third, it is habit forming. The same thing will not give you the same pleasure. You need more of it, varieties of it, and so on. Then he says there's something else which gives you much more happiness than pleasure. Sustainable, deep happiness than pleasure. And he calls it engagement. So for example, if you're lucky enough to be doing something in your job which you like, then you're getting happiness from your work. And that happiness is different from pleasure. You may be getting paid for it. I remember reading an interview with a pilot. He says, I'm so delighted to be a pilot. I love flying. I would have done it for free. Imagine, they're paying me for it. So if you're getting paid to do something you love, you get happiness from it. And that happiness is, he calls it engagement, because it's not pleasure. To do your job is often not pleasurable. It's hard work. It's difficult. It's exhausting. It can be troublesome. It can also make you upset. But all of that is engagement. It gives you a lasting happiness. Suppose you don't get it from work. That's why people take up hobbies, games, sports, where you're not just sitting back and enjoying passively, but you're actually going out there and playing a game. It's hard work. It may not be pleasurable as such, but it gives you happiness. So for example, you play a game of tennis and you watch a game of tennis on TV. Watching the game of tennis on TV may be a top-ranked player, but that's passive consumption. So that is pleasure. But if we go out and play, no matter how poorly, still you're engaged. And that gives you a different kind of happiness. That's called engagement. So he says, there's another source of happiness for us, engagement, which is a deeper, more stable, more nourishing, sustainable kind of happiness. Much more than pleasure. People would rather get something that we engage in it rather than passively consume. One way of overcoming addiction is to give them some higher engagement. Any kind of addiction, it's because only source of happiness I can find is pleasure. And this particular pleasure is addictive, so I can't give it up, even if it causes so much trouble. But if there's some higher engagement, where my energy, my time, my focus is drawn to it, then amazingly, addictions begin to drop off. There's no time and energy left for that anymore. So engagement, to where my energies are focused and used. Seligman shows a very interesting study. Actually, the study was done by another person, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He is another psychologist who did remarkable work, all in positive psychology. This was, he passed away a few years ago. His famous book is Flow, F-L-O-W, Flow, on the study of attention, focus, concentration. One of his studies shows that people are actually happy at work. When you ask people, when are you happy? They'll always say, when I relax, go on vacation, on Saturday, Sunday. But if you survey people, at moment to moment, if you take survey, right now, how well are you feeling? 1 to 5. In the middle of work, at home, in a vacation. On average, he found they score higher during work. If you ask us, we think that we'll be happy when I'm relaxing. But actually, if you ask how are you feeling right now, we always give higher scores when we are engaged. So at work, although people think that work is not happy, I'll be happy after work. No, at work people are happy, even though we don't evaluate it that way. Why are we happy at work? Because of engagement. Because you're engaged in activity. You feel needed. You're fulfilling something, a function, and of course you're getting paid for it. Any more source of satisfaction? He says, there is another source of satisfaction you have, happiness, which gives you more happiness than engagement, much more happiness than pleasure. And Seligman calls it meaning in life, a meaningful life. And usually this meaning in life comes out of almost always going beyond the limits of one's ego and one's individuality, individual personality. Beyond the circle of I, me, mine. If we feel needed, if we are actually contributing people whose lives, to whom we are making a difference, then that gives a deep sense of meaning and purpose to life, and that becomes a greater source, a different kind of happiness, but more happiness than, say, work, let alone pleasure. People, if they're lucky enough to find some deep meaning in life, they may even sacrifice, they often do, sacrifice pleasure. They may even give up careers. I have met people who do service, they're what is called social service in India. Some of the most well-known people, I was in a conference with them once, talking to young people. They were millionaires from Silicon Valley who had made their fortune in IT, but given it all up to go to India and start organization which gives second-hand clothes to the desperately poor. A restaurant chain owner in Chennai, I forget the name of the gentleman. He was horrified to see people eating from garbage because they were so desperately hungry. So he started a chain of restaurants, but he's a brilliant marketing man. He started a chain of restaurants so that the leftovers, he would collect them and he would personally go around the city looking for hungry people, mentally ill people, couldn't feed themselves, and he would personally feed them. And he had a whole team of people from the restaurant who go around doing that. Then I met another person in the same council was a man, those who are from the state of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh in India. You know that there's something called the Super 30?
Yeah. But
They
now
got, yes, Anand. He was there in that group. Now, one young man in the audience asked a question. You all have had extraordinary careers, money, fame. Why did you give it up? You're doing some good stuff now. So isn't it a great sacrifice? And all of them said, we don't feel it's a sacrifice. We are much happier now than we were there. If it give us the opportunity to go back and you earn more money there and be famous there and not do the work that we will, none of us, all of them said, no, we will not give this up. Why? Because they don't feel they are making a sacrifice. They feel they are much happier than they were earlier. How so? Not pleasurable. It's not that they are engaged in making a lot of money. The P and the E are less. And the meaning that they're getting out of what they are doing is so enormous that they feel blessed. They feel really empowered. They feel fulfilled. Okay, why am I saying all this? First of all, this is new research, last 20-25 years. Happiness, P plus E plus N. So just see, if you're not feeling happy, what can you plug in? which can increase, push up in our own lives. Now, go back thousands of years. Hinduism. In the book Religions of the World, Houston Smith, who was an early Vedantist, by the way, in St. Louis, in Missouri, Kansas, Missouri, actually, in the United States. He wrote this book, The Religions of the World, famous book in comparative religion. And the first chapter was on Hinduism, and there he starts. He says Hinduism is so complex. So he's thinking, how can I put it into one story? One central united idea. By that idea can I explain the whole of Hinduism. He says, I sought, and then I came upon it. He says, the way he puts it is very beautiful. Hinduism tells you that you can have what you want. Now when you say that, it brings a smile to everybody saying, oh, that's nice. But then he says, but that throws up upon us the question, what do you want? What do you want? Well, we want to be happy, fulfilled. Yes, but what do you want to be fulfilled? What do you need to be fulfilled? What will you ask for? And then Hinduism tells us 4 things. Kama, Artha, Dharma, Moksha. Kama, pleasure. All kinds of pleasure. Artha, success, wealth, prosperity. Dharma, morality, ethics, meaning. Moksha we'll see next. So, and generally in India when we use these terms, we don't say Kama, Artha, Dharma, we say Dharma, Artha, Kama. We always put Dharma first and then, so morality or ethics or religion, Dharma is a very broad umbrella term. And that's followed by pleasure and wealth or prosperity, and then finally moksha. But what I want us to see is, can you map P, H is equal to P plus E plus M, pleasure, engagement, meaning. Can you map it to Kama, Artha, Dharma? More or less. The first one maps precisely. Pleasure, Kama is literally the same thing. Engagement and Artha, you can sort of stretch it. And meaning and Dharma also, you can sort of stretch it there. So you have the same mapping, the same intuitive understanding with some modifications. Happiness comes out of not just satisfying our desire for pleasure, not just making it big in life, doing well in life, wealthy, successful, powerful, prosperous. That's also a big source of happiness, engagement, but also a meaningful life. And meaning usually comes out of going beyond the boundaries of the little self, from selflessness rather than selfishness. Vivekananda says, selflessness, or he uses the word unselfishness. Unselfishness is more paying, but it takes maturity to understand that. We think we will be much happier if I'm selfish. After all, I will do something for I, me, myself. So I should be happy. But after some time, I begin to notice a lifetime of doing stuff for I, me, myself, or I, me, mine, didn't make me very free. I still feel at a loss, unhappy. Even when things are going well, you have existential angst, kind of dissatisfaction. It could be better. And sometimes, most of the time, things are not going well. Something is coming apart. So we lurch from crisis to crisis and we are not happy. Now comes the next part of it, moksha. It's something that positive psychology doesn't yet go into. At most, Seligman might say, of course, later on he did say, Maslow also said, spiritual transcendence is a higher goal, even more than, what did he say, Maslow? Self-actualization. We learned it in college. Self-actualization. Physiological needs, security needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. That's the pyramid of hierarchy of needs. But later, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But later on he said, he added transcendence, spirituality. That's a higher need. And it's a need. We need it. At one time we realized it is not enough. It's not enough to have fun. It's not enough to be a little richer. It's not even enough to have a satisfying career and some kind of meaningful life and done something. Even that is not enough. Beyond that, is there something? Is there meaning in life? Is there a point to all this? Is there anything after death, for example? These questions about God, self-realization, are they true? So, here comes the higher quest for happiness, a deeper quest for happiness. This moksha is also a quest for happiness. People think, oh, these people who are yogis and monks and those who are, like they said, you're doing so much of social service, such a great sacrifice. If they're sacrificing, no, not we are not. None of us are sacrificing. Spiritual seekers are also seeking exactly the same thing that the materialist is seeking, just a little more in a mature way, more wisely, in a deeper way. How does that work? One way is not only a meaningful life, but from that meaningful life you get a selfless life. Very counterintuitive. There will be these 4 counterintuitive ideas towards this deeper happiness, spiritual happiness. A selfless life. We generally think selfish life is a happy life. I try to make myself happy, you'll be happy. But then an intuition comes, the more I work for the welfare of others, the more happier, immediately happier I feel. The more selfless I am, the more I get meaning in life. It's counterintuitive. You would not understand it at first. And generally, the very young don't understand it. Sometimes they do, but we try to teach it to them. When you say you have to share, it doesn't come naturally. But when they learn the joy of sharing, then they begin to taste this. That if I do something for others, I am happier. I am more deeply happy. I remember this experiment Seligman mentions, that in psychology class, psychology students were told that today there is no class, you will go and see a movie. So they all went to see a movie. And after they came back, the professor gave them this questionnaire. Rate the happiness you get, the pleasure, the joy you got from seeing the movie, 1 to 5. Least happy? Very happy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they rated it. Next week he said, no class today. Students must have said, another movie? No. Today we are going to go to this school for underprivileged kids, and we have collected toys and clothes, we are going to give it to them, and we'll get to know them, we're going to play with them, and then come back in the afternoon. They did that. They came back. Same questionnaire. Rate your satisfaction. 1 to 5. And they gave some scores. Now the interesting thing came 6 months later. Suddenly in the class, the professor gave out these sheets and said, you remember 1 week we had gone for a movie? Now when we look back upon that movie, right now, how much happiness do you feel from that movie? They gave some score. Many of you said, I forgot the name of the movie. Now we remember we went to a movie. Right now I don't feel much happiness, maybe 1 or 2 or something. And then he said, and we also went the next week to a school where we met a lot of children and we gave them gifts and spent some hours with them. How much happiness does that give you now? And they still said, very high levels of happiness. 4 or 5, even after 6 months, making the point that this kind of meaningful activity, a kind of selfless activity, is a small thing, an experiment. But that also gives you some sustained happiness months. And I will wager years and decades into the future of these people that they will feel happy that they did this. Whatever we do for others without a quid pro quo, asking for something back, and that gives us a lasting and deep happiness, even for yourself. You don't do it for that, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable you will get it. It's counterintuitive. You don't think that doing stuff for others makes me happy. That's one. The second insight is emotion. We have this idea that I want stuff, and if my desires are satisfied, I'll be happy. Whole of our economics is based on that. You increase desires and you satisfy the desires and you're maximizing utility. That's what we're taught in economics class. The psychoanalyst Eric Fromm, he said, today what has happened to happiness in our society, meant America in the 1950s and 60s. Happiness in our society is a matter of generating tension and releasing it. That's what happiness has come. You increase the tension by advertisement, building up something, and then people buy it or do that and activate it, and they find, I'm happy, I did it. So, not that kind of happiness. With desires, as we saw, satisfaction desires, very temporary happiness, it goes away. There is a counterintuitive idea here. If we take all our desires, step away from trying to satisfy 101, 1,000 desires, and take all of that and focus it on the divine, on God, on love, but into one almighty love, the love of God. Yes, the love of humans, love of all living beings, but in and through God. If you have faith in God, it's an increasingly atheistic or agnostic age, so God is not popular. But the ancients, our ancestors throughout history, it would be very foolish of us to ignore their collective wisdom. I remember reading this French philosopher, Ferry, Luc Ferry, Lucferry. So he wrote a book in French. Somebody challenged him that, can you write a history of thought, by which they meant history of Western thought, in a short form, interesting form for ordinary people. So he took up the challenge and wrote the book, and apparently it became so popular in French that they translated it into English. So it's called History of Thought, Luc Ferry. And there he traces the history of Western thought, from Greek thought to the advent of Christianity and Christian theology, to modernism, and now postmodernism. 4 great phases, major phases of Western thought. But my point here is, at the end of the book, he says, if you were asked, which one would you prefer? The Greek worldview, the Christian worldview, or the modern worldview? Modern means the Enlightenment, modern worldview, or the postmodern worldview, which is taking over more and more now. Which one would you prefer? And he says, without a doubt, I would prefer the Christian worldview. There is God, there is heaven, there is immortality. But the problem is, I can't believe it anymore. He says, in this day and age, in a postmodern society, knowing what we know, how can you believe such childish stories? Yet I want that to be true. So the challenge in our age is to have spirituality, religion, but in terms that would satisfy the highest intellect. Answer questions, the toughest questions, from scientists, from philosophers today in 21st century. Can it pass through that gauntlet of fire, those tests, and still survive? This is where Vedanta shines at. There is extraordinary insights. But anyway, without going into that, if you have, and I know most of us here are preaching to the choir, so most of us here are religious people or spiritual people, so we have some faith in a divine. And therefore, a belief in God, in whatever form, in whatever religion, not just a belief in God, a great, Viveknanda calls it a great and almighty love, a one almighty love for God. which subsumes all our other desires. The satisfaction of those desires becomes secondary. That building up of tension and releasing it in a sequence, that becomes unnecessary or secondary. So my joy comes from the great love of God, of the divine. And that's a bhakti is defined as always new, always increasing. Just the opposite of satisfying pleasures. Pleasures become old very fast. Bhakti, love of God, always new, always increasing. And always a source. Love is always a source of great fulfillment, happiness. So counterintuitive. Why counterintuitive? We think we'll be happy by satisfying a range of desires. Here's the counterintuitive idea. Step away from that range of desires. But you can't have a vacuum. That feeling, I want, it stretches out to the world in 1,000 different forms. I want 1,000 different things. Instead of that, shove it all aside and substitute it with God in whatever tradition you're comfortable with. So instead of I want the world in these 1,000 different streams of desire, I want God. And see what happens. A great love. I was coming here, in one of the church walls, it's a simple message. Just on the walls, nothing else. Just a message. Try praying. That's all. I loved it. People who are in trouble, who are struggling. Simplest advice. Try praying. I don't believe in God. Pray like this. If you exist, I'm praying to you. Try praying. So a great love of God gives tremendous happiness. Then, counterintuitive. Third great idea. We're talking about moksha, the spiritual pursuit, the deeper spiritual happiness. Third great idea. Our minds. Where is your attention? This is a great question of our age, with social media and these phones and all of these things. Where is your attention? The greatest currency, the most valuable resource now we are beginning to understand. And the people who have understood first and foremost is Silicon Valley. That's why they're trying to steal your attention. But that's why these phones, ding, ding, ding. What are they doing? On purpose. They designed it. They actually consulted psychologists who brought in the psychology of the Las Vegas slot machines. Why do people get addicted to them? They realize that if you give on a random scale of victories, of wins, so you play, you may lose, you may win. Sometimes you win. It's not guaranteed you will win, it's not guaranteed you will lose. That possibility that the next time I play, I might win, something nice will happen, that hooks people. Many people have this vulnerability. Not all, this is an interesting thing about psychology. Many people have this vulnerability. They are vulnerable to addiction. So this vulnerability to addiction to those playing, those gambling things, they get addicted to gambling. But what these people did in Silicon Valley, it's infernal. What they did was, their idea was, how can we get people addicted to this? Why do they want us addicted to this? Because your attention given to this translates into dollars. It's all about dollars inevitably. So it translates into dollars in advertisement revenue for them. That's what I am given to understand. It's called the attention economy. So the more attention you give to these devices, the more money these organizations make. They stand to gain profits. So they want us addicted to it. How do you get them addicted? Make them paying attention to this device. Take a look once in a while. And so you use it more and more. They say that if the content is free, you are the product. It seems to be, you are being sold here. What is being sold? How am I being sold? My attention is being sold. My time is being sold. My attention is being sold. How do I know if I'm addicted? Switch off the phone, take it away, don't step near it for 1, 2, 3 hours. If you feel the slightest bit of uneasiness, it's almost sure for most of us in the world. This is it's called a soft addiction. Now, this creates unhappiness. They have shown that the current generation of youngsters studies in the United States, in colleges and universities, sharp increase in the incidence of mental illness, in unhappiness, depression, and a good deal of it is, one of the factors is this social media and continuous breaks in attention. So focused attention, happiness. Distraction. We think the more distracted I am, the more I can browse this, more I can go do half a dozen different things. I'll be happier. At the end of it, I'm not happy. You try it yourself. Browse for 1 hour or 2 hours on the phone, just mindlessly. Do whatever comes on the phone, watch it, and see how you feel at the end of it. And for 2 hours, sit and read a serious book. Take the effort to do that. At the end of it, see how you feel. It's a big effort, but you will feel more integrated and richer, enriched, focused, calmer, inward, at the end of reading a book for 1 or 2 hours. It's inevitable. It's something that our generation and surely our parents or grandparents knew very well. But it's now being, it's become rarer and rarer now. There's a book, Deep Work, Calvin book, where he says, he's an academic, but he has studied work and productivity in our digital age. He says one of the rarest things that's going to be there is attention, focus. If you can focus in this age, the rewards for you will be multiple times more. That's what he calls deep work. So here is the third insight on happiness. And focus, not distraction. Concentration. Sustained concentration gives happiness. It seems difficult, not boring, difficult. No, it gives happiness. The end result is happiness. The end result of distraction, restlessness is unhappiness. It's inevitable. You can check it out. Finally, the last insight I want to bring about deep happiness is inquiry into ourselves. We are focused, we are busy with the world. Shakespeare, I think, we're busy with getting and losing it. Spending and
Getting and spending.
Getting and spending, yes. Our lives go away in that. But what about looking inwards? The Upanishads say that our senses continuously flow outwards, and we are engaged outwards with the world, and therefore we do not see what lies within. I love that. There's this statement which I love. I don't know who said it. Whatever is behind you and whatever is yet in front of you is as nothing compared to what is within you. We are busy with our life in the past, memories, nostalgia, or regrets. We are busy with our life in the future, hope, delight, expectation, or anxiety, or fear. And maybe a little bit in the present. I saw a cartoon by Groucho Marx, I think, that we are constantly, there's a man who is constantly slipping and falling. Sometimes he slips and falls backwards, sometimes he slips and falls forwards. So we are like that, constantly falling into the future or into the back. But what is behind us and what is yet in front of us, we think that is our life, that's the most important thing. And here it says, no, the most important thing is what is within you. Not what is happening in life, not what was in the past, not even what will happen in the future. So that sounds hopeless. No, what will happen in the future will happen. And I can guarantee you it will not be all that great. So that's very disappointing to know. It's good to know the truth. Even if you make it really, really good in life, you will feel, okay, I saw it, it was not as great as I imagined. If things don't go well in life, of course, you will not feel good. Inevitably. The only results of what has happened in our life and what will happen in our lives in the future is either frustration or disappointment. Unless one has hit upon this inner source of fulfillment and happiness. And that is the self-inquiry, the inquiry into who am I or what am I. Those who have studied Vedanta, I've just outlined the 4 yogas. To be selfless rather than selfish, counterintuitive, doesn't come easily to us. That is karma yoga. To have an almighty or consuming love for God instead of 1,000 different